Hi folks, Trish Triumpho Sullivan here with a quick demo on portrait lighting for portrait photography indoors. Okay, number one, you need to make sure your camera's on manual control, and I recommend that you use a narrow depth of field, so that means a large aperture. I'm going to set mine on f4, but you could use f5.6, f2.8, or even f1.7, whatever you have on your camera that's a fairly large aperture, lens aperture, okay? And you're going to make sure that you are using manual focus, right? So that means you're focusing with the lens, not with your camera. If you're going to do this indoors, you're going to have about 4 to 5 more stops of light in your camera than the Sunny 16 rule. So Sunny 16 rule, remember, is f16 at 1/250th of a second and an ISO of 200. So you're going to add 4 stops more light. That's either on your aperture, so f16, f11, right? f8, f5.6, f4. Right? There's your 4 stops right there, and it gives you the larger aperture. Okay? And that's at 1/250th of a second. You might have to adjust that just a little bit for your conditions, but that's how you're going to set your camera. Okay, so you're going to make sure that that's your Sunny 16 rule for indoors, which is 4 stops more light. All right, then you're going to set up your background. I have here a piece of black fabric. You can use any kind of fabric or paper. I'm just going to drape it up over something to make it work for me for a background, because remember, background is very important. Then I'm going to place a quick chair in front of it. Right? I'm going to turn off the lights because the room needs to be dark if you're going to use natural light from a window. And you can see, here, can I go over this way? You can see that we have a window here, right? And the light's coming in from the side. Right? So if I'm going to have my my subject sitting in front of this black curtain, right, and I'll probably have the camera down a little bit lower. So once you lower down just a little bit so you can see where, and remember we talked about posing. We want to have shoulders maybe to the side like this, not straight on. We don't want that mugshot look, okay? So what we want to do is make sure that our shoulders are a little, slightly maybe 3/4 turned, okay? And then we can have the subject looking directly at the camera. They can be looking away from the camera. That's okay, right? You can try different angles from up above, from down below, from straight on. See what works best. And you might want to, I want you to make sure that you try different lighting poses. So try broad light, which means the broad side of the face is lit. Try short light, which means the short side of the face is lit, okay? And you can, I prefer you don't have them looking straight on, but if you do, you make sure that the shoulders are moved a little bit, okay? And do some fun with posing. I know having someone sitting like this, you might want to have them try tilting their head, depending. See what works best with light. Try 5 or 6 different settings just like that, and make sure that you have your background so that your subject is isolated. If you have if you want to do something like this, where you have your subject, straddling the chair, right? Let me back this up a little bit. There we go. You can have poses like this, right? All kinds of different ways that you can pose. And the type of lighting that you use, right, for portraits, whether it's broad light or short light, depends on your subject. A subject with a really round face might look better with short lighting, the short side of the face lit, right? A subject with a very thin face might look better with broad lighting, the broad light of the side of the face lit. Okay, so those are some options. They're not the only options. And this is only for indoors. Outdoors is going to be just the same, except you'll go by the Sunny 16 rule, right? The same rule, but it also goes for outdoors. Right? Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next lecture. So let's look at some examples of really good and not so good, and even some mediocre portraits, formal portraits. So we're going to look at this one to start with. It looks a little awkward, doesn't it? That's because there's a lot more space on this side here than the side that the subject is facing over here. So the subject is facing to this direction, right, to the right here. But there's all this empty space over on this side. And it looks a little awkward. So here's where cropping could be really important. So let's look at it cropped up a little bit and see how much of a difference that makes, right? That gets right in. That's the kind of portrait we want to see, right? Where the focus is on the face. When we look at something like this, it seems awkward. She's kind of falling out of the picture frame, right? Of the actual format that it's in. You always want to leave more space on the side that the subject is oriented towards than on the side that the subject is oriented against. So cropping some of that off, right, can make a big difference, but it still seems awkward unless you kind of crop like that. So let's keep moving. So here we have her cropped up a little bit and even a little bit more. Right, that looks a lot better. So here's a kind of it's formal, but it's kind of informal too. That looks a little more casual. They're obviously posing for this photograph. It's a narrow depth of field. The lighting is really nice from the side, natural light. And so when we look at this, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, even though it's blurred out. So if we kind of crop it, kind of zoom in a little bit, and this is cropping after, right? Not in the camera, but after. So this is how you can fix some photos that seem a little awkward when you look at them at first, right? You want to keep looking at that rule of thirds, work on having it, your subject in that, intersected with that rule of thirds, okay? And notice the difference of having him right in the center to having him off to one side, so that you have more space on the side where his face is oriented towards, right? Because he's looking to the left here, and less space on the side he's not oriented towards. So it really makes a big difference, right? So here we have someone who's right almost smack dab in the middle of the photograph. The lighting is very nice here. Notice that it is in either late afternoon or early morning. You have nice soft lighting coming from one side with fill light coming from the other. So you have direct plus fill. And it's a very pleasant photograph. The subject has a dark top on, so it's not taking away from her face. But look how much difference it makes when you kind of zoom in on her a little bit. Right, so this is just a crop. This is cropping after you've taken the photograph, and you see how she looks now and the improvement when you get a little bit more up close. Right, very nice lighting. Here's a lovely little child. Notice once again, there's more room on this side of the photograph where the child is not oriented towards, and less room on the side that the child is oriented towards. So this is not good composition. You always want more room on the orientation side and less room on the back side, basically, okay? It just seems, it seems awkward like this. So here's cropped up, using the rule of thirds, and see what a difference it is to get up close and personal to this lovely little girl. Now this is diffused light, which normally I would not recommend, but in this case it works. You've got a nice sparkle in the eye. The face is not too dark. Direct sunlight might have been a little bit intense for a little child like this whose skin is very pale and transparent. So this might have been a better choice for the lighting. And like I said, normally diffused is not good. In this case, we've got that great sparkle in the eye, and it really works. All right, so here we have one that's a little bit more informal. but it's definitely posed. Makes a big difference having it in a little bit close up. Okay. Here's another one. This is another diffused light. Notice that the light's super bright in the background. It's quite the contrast. This is not the background I would normally choose for a photograph or a bunch of parked cars. It doesn't look like they paid a lot of attention to the background. It actually looks like there's a palm tree growing out of his head. Not the most not the best lighting, right? We can see that they didn't follow the instructions of using direct and fill. This is diffused light. The eyes look really dark, so it's not the most flattering. Here's if we kind of pop in a little bit. You lose a little bit of that palm tree sprouting from the head look. It's still kind of dark in the eyes. Remember, this is not a good light source. Diffused light is not good. The only way to save this might have been using a flash. A reflector doesn't work in diffused light, you guys, because diffused light, obviously, if there's no direct light, there's nothing to reflect. So remember, that's not good. Here's a very nice indoor portrait. The lighting is fantastic. It's a little busy in the background. I normally wouldn't have some kind of a floral thing in the background like that. Obviously, they have her holding a prop, which a book would be a prop in this case. Nothing wrong with that, so I don't know what it quite adds to the photograph. It might make it a little bit too busy. So we cropped it up a little bit. Now this is a huge improvement. Whoops. Notice how wonderful the lighting is here. This is the indoor lighting. It's direct and fill. They have her sitting next to a window. When we're close up like this, the little flower in the background isn't quite as much of a bummer to the composition. The lighting is fantastic. This is a wonderful portrait. Some of the best lighting I've seen in student work in a long time. So let's keep going here. Here's kind of a fun one. They have the guy looking up and smiling. Kind of captures his personality. He's oriented okay, and that's good. Here's a candid portrait that could be really powerful, but there's so much stuff going on in the background, and it's not a narrow depth of field, so it's hard to tell who we're focusing on here. I think this is the person they're focusing on, and getting a little bit more up close, cropping it up so we can be sure who the subject is really important. So here's another outdoor one, little bit improved by this. The clothing takes away from his face, right? We're looking at the logos on the clothing as opposed to his face here. They're pretty bright, and they're probably the brightest thing in the photograph. Here's another one that has used diffused light, and looks like they've had to take a flash to put a little bit of light on the face, which would be what you would have to do in diffused light to lighten up the subject. The orientation I do not think is correct, so we're going to crop it up a little bit. Look at the improvement there. Okay, so we're going to keep moving along here pretty quickly. We don't spend too much time on this. Here is the worst kind of lighting that you could possibly do for a portrait. It's midday. The sun is directly overhead, as you can see from the shadow on his face and on his chest. It's the least flattering type of light you could use. It looks like they've tried to use a reflector, but it still hasn't brightened his face up very much. It's much brighter in the background, and the contrast is kind of going the wrong way there. Now we've cropped it up a little bit. This is an improvement, but it's still not the right kind of lighting. You guys have to use correct lighting, and I recommend early morning, late afternoon, light coming from the side. Okay, here's another window portrait. This is very nice. This is short lighting. That would be the short side of the face is lit, right? Once again, and so the broad side of the face, which is this side, is in shadow, and there is fill light in here, so it's not completely dark. We can see into the shadow. I would have liked to have seen this subject in more of a solid color or a dark color. The green, I think, kind of takes away from it. They've spent the time to put a nice solid neutral color background in. There's a nice chair with a nice kind of arch to it that helps frame the subject, which is a device that artists use very often, and that's good. I'm not a big fan of this green shirt, but if we crop it up, it's much of a much improved. Really good work there. Here's a nice outdoor one. Once again, this is diffused light. Like we said before, we don't want to see diffused. And the format doesn't work for someone sitting cross-legged, which is more, they've used a horizontal format for what should be more of a vertical format. So we cropped it up for a vertical format, orientation, a little bit more room on the side, but a little bit of asymmetrical balance, much better. And another thing, I don't want to see the horizon line tilted. On this one you can see the horizon line is tilted. It's at an angle, right? It's going at this kind of an angle through the photograph. So I want you to make sure your horizon line is straight, right? There, I've straightened it in a photo editing program. I personally use Photoshop, but there is Pixlr. That's a free program. So you want to make sure, from this to this, right? Cropped up and straightened up, much better. Here's a photograph where once again, there's a lot of room on the side where the subject is not oriented towards. The subject is turned more towards this side. There's more space on this side. Plus, there's a lot of really bright light area up in the background here. So let's crop it up and see how it looks. Like a little bit better now, right? And this is another one with really nice late afternoon or early morning light. You can see the lights coming from the side. They've used fill light. We've got this beautiful kind of orange yellowish light that they call it the sweet light, where it makes every complexion, every type of skin tone look really fantastic. That's why we use this type of light. That's why we recommend this. Once again, here's some diffused light. Does it work for this? I think it's okay. I still would have cropped it up a little bit, make it a little bit more asymmetrical, where we have the rule of thirds working for us. Here is one using some indoor directional light, direct plus fill, right? We talked about that. And very nice pose. However, once again, we have a horizontal format where it should be a vertical format. So we cropped that one up as well, changed it up, brought her in closer. There's another possibility right there, right? Here's one where once again, the photographer has put way more space on the side where the subject is not facing and less space on the side where the subject is facing. This is wrong. It needs to be opposite. There should be more space on this side. So let's crop it up, see what happens. Boom, much better, right? Once again, very nice light. This is broad lighting, where the light is hitting the broad side of the face. And you can see there is fill light on this side because we can see into the shadow. Very nice lighting. Once again, late afternoon, early morning. And you have a nice sparkle in the eye. You can really see the eyes. Here's one where there's a lot of stuff going on in the background and it's taking away from the subject. Let's crop it up. Boom, much better. Rule of thirds. We've got closer into the subject. And remember the format here, see they've used a vertical format. However, it's still not close enough in. So we cropped it up here. And then if you really wanted to get closer, this is another really nice crop, rule of thirds. It's looking good, okay? Here's another nice outdoor one. But once again, diffused light, not as good as direct, but cropping it can make a difference. Okay, here's another really wonderful late afternoon, early morning light source. Really nice pose. The subject looks comfortable. The clothing is correct, but a little bit better when it's cropped up, and even better when it's like a little bit more cropped up. So look at the difference again. Here we've got the original. It's not bad. That's better though, and that's even better. Got the kid. Boom. Keep looking at how nice the light looks, right? Here's one where once again the guy's oriented a little bit less here and more here, and it should be the opposite. So let's crop him up too. There we go. Much better, isn't it? And even better there. Here we go again. We did this one mostly because there's a lot of bright light back here, and we know that our eye tends to go towards the brightness and take us out of the photograph. We don't want to do that, so I wanted to get rid of that real bright light in the corner so that we can focus on the face and really move towards that rule of thirds. We did that much better. Even better there maybe. Okay. Here's one with window light. Remember, you don't need to have the person stand in the window, okay? They just need to be near the window, next to the window. And you want to make sure the background's good. This guy doesn't look too happy. Maybe that's his personality. But this definitely has a better crop. Okay? Look at a few more. With a cutie pie, much better, right? Imagine always getting closer in than you're ready to. So this is okay. That's better, isn't it? And that's even better. This is the kind of portrait we want to see. Right? You get the idea, you guys? I think you do. You can see, you can watch this over and over if you need help. Okay. So that's it. Those are some examples of good cropping and some different lighting. Remember the kind of lighting we told you about. The way to have some really good lighting. We want to see not diffused light like some of these are. We want to see direct and fill. Okay. I want to see, let me get back to one where I have really good lighting. That's some nice lighting. There we go. That's some of the best lighting we've had all day. Right? We'll see you in class. Take some really good portraits and have fun.